Hello, my name is Michelle Imali and I will be presenting Creating a Healthy Workplace. So the conflict. On a Tuesday morning, day shift nurses arrive in the floor finding the unit full to its capacity, which is very typical. All the nurses, 5 in total, has 6 high acuity patients, and 2 certified nurses assistants had 12 patients in total, leaving some nurses to have patients with no help. One of the certified nursing assistants felt that the nurses were not helping her with her workload, and then proceeded to go straight to the director to complain about what was happening instead of asking for help. So that is the dilemma. There's tension in the unit. The nurses have had what the nursing assistant told the director. The director is upset because he sees that there's no teamwork in the unit, and there's just tension. And you as a charge nurse, so I as a charge nurse, how do I solve this? So steps for conflict management according to Marcus and Houston book, there are different steps. The first step is competing, and this is when one party pursues what it wants at the expense of the other, and the result of this will leave the other party to feel angry or frustrated or wanting to get even in the near future. For example, in our situation, if the director or me as a nurse manager, I take the side of the nursing assistant and tell the nurses to help and add to their workload, that will actually cause anger and frustration, and the nurses will want to actually get back to the nursing assistant in future. Another one is compromising. Each party gives up what it wants. The results will leave either or both parties to perceive that they have given up something, and they may feel defeated. So for example, in our situation, the nurses could decide to help out with the just to add on the load of what they are doing, their high acuity, and also take up some of the responsibilities of the CNA, and then the CNA is given even more work than what she was even doing before, and just deciding to still continue with the work, and she's feeling that the situation is not really resolved. The other one is cooperating or accommodating. This is when one party sacrifices his or her belief and allows the other party to win. The results will be actual problems is not solved. So in this case, if the nurses just decide, you know what, just forget about it, she went ahead and told the director, we'll just let her win, we'll just do her work and whatever, just to keep the peace. Another one is smoothing, and this is when one party in a conflict attempt to pacify the other party or to focus on our agreements rather than differences. So the results will be the emotional component of the conflict is minimized, but resolving the actual problem is rarely solved. So in this situation, if we choose smoothing, the situation at that time, just the workload will be will be taken care of, but there will still be so much tension, and the problem is actually that one of the nursing assistants feels like there's no teamwork in the unit. Another way we could go about it, I could go about it as a leader, is avoiding, and this is both parties are aware of the conflict but choose not to acknowledge it or attempt to resolve it. The result will be that the conflict remains, and this would be like the nursing assistant went to the manager or the director, and the nurses are aware, and I as a charge nurse, I'm aware, and I avoid it. I'm too busy to start to discuss or to solve any problems. I just tell them, everybody do your work, and at the end of the shift we clock out and we leave, and that doesn't leave any problem solving. Another one is collaborating, and this is when both parties set aside their original goals and work together to establish a priority, a common goal. The result will be all parties accept mutual responsibility for reaching the priority goal. And so if we decide to take this route, both the nursing assistant and all the nurses who are in the unit will decide, okay, I know we are busy, I know we have to do all things, but what's the priority goal right now? If it's to get vital signs and IQ checks before we can start cleaning the patients, and the family members are asking, they want the patients to be cleaned, and they're soiled, the priority, and if because both the nurses and the PCTs or the CNAs need to get the vitals, so they could both collaborate and finish one priority and then go to the next. So steps for conflict resolution. So in my case, as a charge nurse, I have chosen collaboration. So there is before, during, and after. So before the conflict, before I call all the nurses and the CNAs and all the staff really for a quick huddle, so we can resolve all the tension that is in the unit, I gather as much information as possible regarding the issue to negotiate. So in our case, I gather the information from the CNA who reported the issue, and also from the nurses that she is representing and helping out, to see what's going on, the workload, the acuity of the patients, and to see how really I can tackle and help and suggest to help the situation. Another thing I will do is determine the incentive of the person I will be willing to negotiate with. There are different people with very different emotions. Everybody has a different personality, and the way the other party perceives me as being fair and open to negotiation often plays a high role in the decisions that will be reached in the negotiation. And I will also determine where to start in the negotiation. And so this will be determining what the priority is for us to do that will help both the nurses not to feel like they're overwhelmed with their work, and they're also taking work from other sides of like the CNA, and also for the CNA not to feel like the nurses are not helping, and so that they could be teamwork and the tension could just go away. So during the conflict resolution, I've gathered the information, I know what I'm going to start with. I have to appear calm, collected, and self-assured, because I do know the facts, because I did the homework, and I'm well aware of the situation, how the nurses are feeling, and how the CNA is also feeling, and just the teamwork, the tension in the area. And so when I call everybody together in a huddle, I ask probing questions, and I be quiet and let them speak. And during that time, I have to be a very good listener, and I have to be clear in the way I communicate and be able to regroup quickly, because sometimes in a group huddle, people can start the conversation can go another way. So as a leader, I need to regroup quickly if I see the conversation is starting to go in another different way. Then after, I restate what has been agreed on, both verbally and in writing, and also I recognize and thank all participants for their contribution to a successful negotiation. So in this situation, we chose to collaborate. So all the nurses and all the CNAs in the unit came together and decided what their priority was, and the nurses were feeling overwhelmed because they have doctors calling, they have family to answer, patients are calling pain medication, and the CNAs, they have so much work, they have to get vitals and AccuCheck, lunch is on its way, some diabetic patients have not even gotten their AccuChecks yet, and some family members are calling them to change their family members before the lunch is here and they can eat something. So for this, we decided, okay, the priority right now is to get the vitals and to get the AccuChecks, and both the CNA and the nurses can do that. And the CNAs felt like if the nurses could just help with the vitals or the AccuCheck in all the patients, because lunch is already here and they're feeling rushed, they will have time to actually clean the patients who want to be clean, because family members, and it's all about patient satisfaction too, because at the end of the day, when the patients get discharged, they give a bad review of the hospital, and then the scores of the hospital goes down. So we still have to think about that. And so what they decided, all the nurses, they will take the vitals and the AccuCheck of their patients, because they do need it to even give the medications, and then the CNA will make sure the patients are clean before lunch comes, because they only had like an hour before lunch comes, and the family is satisfied, the patient is satisfied, and that one resolved it. The nurses were not feeling overwhelmed because they were still going in the room. So when they go in the room, just take the vital signs machine and, you know, hook up to the patient, take the blood sugar, and keep on doing the nursing care in the room because they're already in the room. And the CNA felt like she was getting help, and the people in the unit were listening to her. And one of the things that the nurses advised the CNA, and everybody actually, and what also I advise everybody too, is before they go to the director, there's a chain of command. If they feel like they need help, instead of just going straightly to the director, they can ask the charge nurse, they can ask the nurses, you know, instead of just being like nobody helps them. And at the end of it, everybody felt comfortable, the tension was gone, and people were laughing, and the patients were happy, the family was happy, and that day everybody left on time. Yeah. So some of the destructive techniques for resolving conflict is aggressively taking over and controlling the negotiation before other members realize what is happening. So in this situation, if I would have called in the huddle and one of the employees started taking over, this is what we need to do, and I am in the leadership position, I would immediately call a halt to the negotiation before the decision is made, and just say, I need to rethink this before we continue. That's one of the way. Another way, a destructive technique for resolving conflict, is sadness and helplessness. For example, if I had before I called the huddle, I went to the CNA and I talked to the CNA, and she was exhibiting sadness and helplessness, and I would have sided with that. And also the nurses were exhibiting frustration and anger, and as a leader you have to be focused, not because as a nurse, like when I see sadness, I want to help, I want to go to help, but I have to know that these are actually distractions, for resolving conflict, and I have to focus, like, what is the main goal, how can we solve it, and how can we build teamwork in this way. So part 2, we have delegation, and I work in a med-surg floor, diabetes, sepsis floor, and some of the tasks that I delegate is escorting discharged patients to the main entrance. I'm usually so busy, and the main entrance is usually far away from where we are, so this is one of the things that I can delegate to the CNA to help me out with it. One of the other thing is feeding patients, and also collecting urine samples and taking them to the lab. The lab is very fine. Our unit, we don't have the tube system where we can tube in samples, lab samples, and take it to the lab. The 5 rights of delegation is right task, right circumstances, right person, right direction or communication, and right level of supervision. And so to go back to the rights, in the cases of right person, for example, if I delegate for the CNA to take a urine sample, I have to make sure that the CNA knows how to take the urine sample from a patient who has a Foley, that they're not taking it from the bag below. If they're very experienced CNA, I don't need to just stand there and make sure I look what they're doing. But if it was somebody who's a new CNA, I have to supervise to make sure that the CNA learns how to take out a clean urine sample from a Foley rather than taking it from the bag. That's one of the things I can delegate, and make sure it's the right person, right technique, and right supervision too, and follow the rights of delegation. Another way I can follow the rights of delegation is when feeding a patient. Feeding a patient, anybody can do it, any CNA can do it, but if the patient is in aspiration precaution, I have to make sure that patient is okay, and I have to actually do it. This is something that I cannot delegate. So one of the delegation errors in this could be improper delegation. If I delegate to a CNA a patient who has aspiration precaution or dysphagia, and then the patient chokes, that's going to be my responsibility because I knew the patient was not, able to swallow very well, because I had the knowledge of that. And some of the delegation errors is under delegating, and this can happen if the nurses are feeling overwhelmed and they don't want to tell the CNAs to do something because they don't want the CNAs to feel like they're giving them their work to do. For example, if I'm very busy, and for in our unit, it's our responsibilities as nurses to make sure that the patient is downstairs and taken to the car when they're being discharged, and that's something that we can delegate to, but it's still my responsibility. And if I feel overwhelmed, I cannot delegate it because I don't want the other nurses to feel that they're overwhelmed. And one of the other delegation errors is over delegating. I know some of the CNAs in our units, they don't like it when you tell them all the time what to do, and because they already know their job. So if somebody's a very experienced CNA, you don't need to be telling them all the time, do this, take vitals, take AccuCheck, what time is it, just keep on following up. But it's still my responsibility to make sure that job is done, because they could get comfortable when nobody's checking after them. So part 3, creating a healthy work environment. A healthy work environment is when nurses are able to provide the highest standard of compassion, patient care while being fulfilled at work. So components of healthy work environment, there's skill communication, true collaboration, and for me, I know that healthy work environment is impossible to achieve, and patient safety is compromised if there's no communication and collaboration in a unit. There's also effective decision making. As a leader, you have to be able to know the policies, to make the right decision, and if you don't know, you can always ask. That's where collaboration comes in, and you ask it's maybe somebody who's more experienced than you are. Appropriate staffing. I know for our unit, it's very important to have enough nurses just to not have that tension, because some of the nurses and some of the CNAs feel very overwhelmed. Our floor is one of the busiest floors, and so just to have the appropriate staffing can help the staff to feel like they're in a work environment, not like, oh, I have to go to work tomorrow, it's going to be overwhelming, I don't want to go there because it's going to be too busy for me. And meaningful recognition. If a CNA does something that is a good job done, you recognize it. Or even nurses, they do something good, you recognize them. You just put up a system where you can recognize nurses and CNAs. There's also authentic leadership. You have to be a leader who has knowledge, and a leader who that they're not afraid to come in and talk to you about it, not afraid that, oh, if they come and express something to you, they're gonna get a write-up and a coaching. So present work environment. I know in our environment, we've been having very different directors. Almost every year we have different directors because they last 1 year. So speaking from the former director, I know the nurses and the CNAs in the units were very afraid, because she had the approach of always coaching and writing people up for just a smallest things. So people used to come to the workplace with fear, because they just don't know. They're afraid like anything that they do is going to get them in trouble. But now we have a new director, and he's taking a different approach, and so we're still working on it to see if it's going to work or not. And one of the other issues that can make our unit not to feel like it's a very healthy work environment is the staffing, because it's a very busy hospital. We are rarely short like that. We're always busy. Is the staffing, because there's so many patients and the acuity is so high. The staffing is not to the level that is, at. And even if it is, when nurses come from other hospitals, they see how busy it is, they usually don't last as long, and we keep on, like, we're always short of nurses. So that's one. And I know the best way to resolve this is if we if nurses don't feel like when they come to work they're being written up, like they're able to talk, like the authentic leadership, they're able to talk to the director about it, so that then they're comfortable. And according to Fried, to create a healthy work environment, an effective leader must create policies to ensure people get feedback and praise for a well job done. And this is one thing that our unit is actually doing, and recognizing the nurses and the CNAs and the staff in general. And also to create a community on the bus, so that when people get off the bus they have a different feeling than when they got in. So basically that the feeling when they come to work, they feel like this is home, and so that when they get off the bus the feeling is the same. They don't feel like, oh, I can't, it's over, I'm going home, I'm glad I wasn't there anymore. And one other thing is, be the driving force. As a leader, be the driving force for not only creating but for maintaining the culture by bringing their whole selves to work. So as a leader, even though I can have problems at home, to bring my whole self and to leave my problems at home, to bring my whole mind, body and spirit, not to be distracted of the things that are, because people can sense it when you're distracted, when you're not yourself. And so just to make sure the work environment is a place when somebody comes, they love what they do, because nursing is a blessing. It's a blessing to be able to serve Jesus. So to come to an environment where people are not, tensed or like just regretting where they're coming, that's one of the jobs of a leader to do. And here are the references. Thank you so much.